Good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be here. And as we open up the final day of the Emerge Conference, and as we look to the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding, we are taking a step back to look forward and using a founder's lens to really interrogate what it means to build systems that people trust, that really are designed for everyone, and that endure over generations. And I am so excited to be joined by Michael McAfee, the CEO of PolicyLink, who is a good friend and colleague. And Michael, this is something you've been thinking about and writing about for some time, so I'm excited to dig into it with you.
It's good to be with you.
So, what does it mean for today's leaders to think like founders?
Well, first, good morning. It's good to be with you all. For us, we use this notion of being a founder first to shift our mindset. It's one thing to critique the nation, but it's another to actually own the nation and to continue to make a commitment to help it evolve into to reach its full potential of all the ideals that are embodied in it. So we use that founder orientation to acknowledge that the founding was incomplete, and that our democracy and our economy, they're living organisms, and they need to continually be nurtured. And we need to be intentional about the design of them. And in the spaces that I'm in, too often we have not. We can offer the critique, but we've kind of saw ourselves as separate from the nation. And so the founder's orientation is an invitation back in. And it's also a recognition to ask us to get in a place of deep humility, because even after our hands get off of this democracy and economy, it'll still be imperfect. But nonetheless, we should still do that work. So we came up with this notion of founders for that very reason. And we wanted people to embody a particular leadership stance when you think about founding. We'll get into different components of that. But the last three, I think, are most important: humility, love for all, and self-renewal. And I'll talk about them later. You know, the first three, radical imagination, audacity, and foresight, you actually see them playing out right now in rather toxic ways. But the last three are quite powerful. And so I'll talk to them as we go through our conversation. But what we were really inviting people into is an invitation to say, what would it look like for you to embody a different stance right now? And for you to think about, before you talk about the nation, who are you becoming as a leader? So that's what being a founder means. It's a way that we go through the world embodying a perspective that would allow us to shape this democracy and economy for everyone.
And I know we'll talk about some of the specifics, but is there something different about the moment we're in now versus maybe a decade ago that, as you said, gives us this invitation to step in? Obviously, the 250th anniversary, but...
There are things that are different and still the same. Mm-hmm. The thing that is the same is that racism has been on full display ever since I've been born. And while we try to deny it and act like it does not exist, it's there. Structural oppression has always been there, whether we're talking about race, class, gender, social, political, or economic. And because we don't talk about it, doesn't mean it doesn't go away. And what you see right now is it's blatantly in your face. The very people who tell me don't talk about race over the last 20-something years actually have nothing to say about folks who are using race to actually just wipe out people's ability to vote in the South, as an example. They have nothing to say about that. And so even as I don't talk about race, 'cause I think there's plenty of work to do without having to talk about it, you can just do the work. I often find that folks rarely have anything to say about folks who are advancing, quite frankly, a racist agenda that is causing total destruction. And you see it. You see it in the gutting of the Voting Rights Act right now. The very folks who said don't talk about race have nothing to say about the populations who will now be marginalized. And I think that that is unacceptable. The norms that leaders operate under have become quite toxic and rivalrous. We all automatically start off seeing each other as enemies before we even get to know each other. The political spectrum, quite frankly, is useless right now. It's useless because it's not producing results for the majority of people in this nation in the first place. So even as you hear me talk, I'm not having a conversation on the political spectrum. I could care less where you sit. What I care about is getting results for folks, and we've lost that capacity. And the last thing I'll say that is tragically, I would say the same and a little different, is that we think charity will get us out of this. This is not a charity moment, folks. This is a nation-building moment. It's been a nation-building moment forever, and a big bet, a charitable investment, will not rectify the level of destruction that you're seeing happen. You're seeing our national systems decaying right before your eyes. And what we're going to have to do is to figure out, how do we reimagine these systems and these institutions for everyone? And the last thing I'll say is this: the wicked problem that we have yet to solve is still right in front of us. And it's going to be here for the next 1,000 years until we decide to resolve it. And that is one word, and that is the word all. You can get as fancy as you like. You're going to keep coming back to this word until we solve for it. We have yet to design this nation for everyone. We didn't do it in our founding. We don't even want to acknowledge it in our history. And yet we have the audacity to sit in rooms and say, well, how are we going to close the racial wealth gap? How do we close economic disparity? You actually can't. And we need to stop fooling ourselves. Until I can see the humanity of each and every one of you and work in service of your thriving, the nation is stuck. And it'd be best to save your money, because you're wasting it trying to invest it in things that will not overcome that wicked problem, that this hierarchy of human value is a cancerous burden to this nation. And while it may sound good when you're on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, it's destroying the nation. It is killing us. And I hope that we can get to a place where we stop running away from each other and we run to each other, and we have the audacity to think about, how do we design communities of opportunity where all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential?
Explicit in what you said is the high cost of getting it wrong.
Yeah.
So if the founder's lens gets us to a better, ideally a better and a different frame for our democracy, let's think about that in connection to financial health, right? That's what we're here to talk about. In plain terms, what is the relationship between economic security and civic participation?
I don't think you get there without economic security. You know, so much of the American dream is based on that fundamental belief that you can have security if you work hard and you play by the rules. We're watching that. I live in Oakland, California, and I'm watching that not be true for folks who went to the best schools in the country and now are saying, wait a minute, I've played by the rules, I've done everything you've asked me to do, and now I won't have a job. And no one's really thinking about what that means for the nation, for trust, for social stability, our market stability. But the reality is, this is one of those areas that is a design challenge that we could actually take on. You know, our economy is not something that's on autopilot. We designed it. And we designed it to be exploitative. We designed it that way. So we can design it to be something else. We can design it to be something else. And we continue to design it to crush people. You see it happening right now with the AI data centers. I'm always fascinated that folks who like the free hand of capitalism never like it in their neighborhoods. I wonder why you don't see all these AI data centers, since they're so amazing, in the neighborhoods that you and I live in. Could have easily cited them there. But we didn't. We cite them in places like Memphis, where you cite them in a neighborhood where automatically, already, the environmental toxicity is higher than any place else. So you cite it in a place where people are already struggling from environmental conditions because of the economy. Doing the same in Utah, do the same in the South. That's a design challenge, folks. That's a design challenge. And then we say, well, it's going to be good for business. If it's good for business, it should be good for your neighborhood too. But these are the types of things that we think that we can just kind of subtly dismiss, and they don't have severe consequence for our democracy and economy. You keep crushing people like that over time, you too would be angry. You too would eventually go to the streets. Go look at who's getting upset right now about these data centers. The majority of those folks are not Black. Those data centers are being sited in places where those folks are white. And what I often say to people is, the cancer from the founding of this nation has actually jumped host. It's jumped host. What was designed to keep me checked now is contaminating your families. And we don't even recognize that. That anti-Black racism is causing too many in this country to suffer who had nothing to do with it. And all you have to do is look at public education. In the Bay, people are infuriated because, you can make $200,000, $300,000 and you don't feel like you'd make that. And if you have children, God forbid, you're going to end up paying $40,000, $50,000 a year for private school because the public education product is not good. So when you read a book like The Color of Law, you actually begin to discover that California's education policy was more racist than in the South. They just did it with a smile. And now the consequence of that is folks who moved to the Bay who had nothing to do with those decisions have to suffer under that tax. And now we're getting ready to create an AI data center tax on people again. And so what I'm asking you to think about is the design of treatment of these decisions that we're making. They're far-reaching.
So as you spoke to, all of these systems are what shapes people's lives, right? Create opportunity or not, create investment or not. Maybe we can think about a founder's test, right? That speaks to the systems that we all want to see that work for everyone. And it's, there are probably a couple of key elements. So let's parse through some of these. First, do they hold up under pressure? Second, do they build trust, earn trust? And then third, do they include voice? So maybe we can parse through these. With respect to pressure, what creates durability of systems when communities are constantly faced with things going sideways, whether it's the economy or disasters striking?
Given everything that I've said, I still think this is a phenomenally hopeful moment. Because
maybe we end there.
I want to bring you back up because I'm immensely hopeful. I'm immensely hopeful because when you get this level of pain, you can have a breakthrough. And this is a level of pain that we're all feeling, and we can have a breakthrough. And so what I think makes this opportunity, makes things durable in community, is for us to actually build institutions that serve. For us actually to build institutions that serve all. For us to recognize in our own leadership that I actually don't have to cause harm to lead well. To actually recognize that I don't have to make you my enemy to actually lead on an agenda. That if I actually listen to a community, they're telling me what I need, and I can do that today. That's the basics of business, listening to the customer. And too often in the discourse of our public life, we're not listening to the customer. That's why I brought up the data center example. But nonetheless, this is a nation-building moment. We talk about going around the country and nation-building, the world and nation-building. I think we have a chance to build a stronger nation right here. And it starts with how each and every one of us takes up our role. That's why I'm hopeful. Because when I get up every day as the CEO of PolicyLink, I can choose how I choose to treat labor. Even as a nonprofit, I choose to treat labor where we pay at the 75th percentile, pay 100% of people's benefits. We close the office 3 weeks out of each year just so people can restore, give people unlimited leave. Now I can say I'm at a nonprofit and I shouldn't do that. But I want to build a different type of institution, an institution where people can come and do their soul work, and not have to struggle to feed their families at the same time. And so I share that because each and every one of us has the agency to enact a different possibility. And that's why I say I want you to be founders, because if you think in the founder mindset, you hear me thinking about that in my own journey of trying to build an institution that can be an exemplar in my sector.
So you spoke a little bit to this, but maybe if there was anything you wanted to add about the trust factor, right? What creates the trust? What builds trust for communities in terms of the institutions actually believing the institutions work for them?
Nothing's going to build trust in this moment other than that people see the consistency of your behavior. You all know these things in the room. You know, the thing that has been the most disheartening for me is the very folks who came to my work around equity 5 years ago are the very ones that hit the door when it got tough. And they've never probably said, I wonder what Michael thinks of me after coming to him when he didn't even ask me to, and then running away as quick as the work got tough. And yet I watch those same leaders today who have nothing to say about what's happening right now in the world. They have nothing to say about the racist comments. They have nothing to say about the political outcomes that are being produced that are devastating to folks. They have nothing to say on these things. And yet they thought that I was the threat. And so we destroy trust by the inconsistent ways in which we behave. We sit on stages like this, and we talk like we talk. And then people look at our behaviors and realize that they're grossly not aligned. Or they see that our institution will quietly stand by and have lost its way in saying, this is not right. Some things just aren't right. We can't even say that anymore. And so what I would invite us to do, I have to do this every day, is actually listen to what people in community are telling us. When you listen to the voice, wisdom, and experience of folks trying to make a living every day, they're telling you what they need. If I'm in the Mississippi Delta or Appalachia, the south side of Chicago, it doesn't matter where I'm at. Folks are telling you what they need. And what they need now are leaders who can translate their hopes and aspirations into real possibility for this democracy and economy. That's the nation building work that's in front of us.
Well, that leads into the last element of this, right, is voice and community power. What does that really look like, and how does that influence outcomes?
I don't know if we really want community power. We say that, but we do everything to destroy it. You see, that's what's happening with voting right now. We're taking community power away from folks. I think it's a fundamental part of our democracy. That voice, that ability to actually articulate a different future, a vision for a different future. And too often those voices are being limited right now. You know, it feels like a scary time to use your voice right now. I think it's a more liberating time. You know, we're not being bit by dogs. We're not being hosed down. At least some of us are not. Some places you are still. But for the majority of us, we have reached a place where we can actually expend some of our political capital in service of others, and we're going to be okay. And I invite you to consider what would it look like for you to do that, because I think about that every day. I did not do all this work to get into this position, serve 8 years in the military, to sit up here and then be afraid to say what needs to be said or to lead in a moment when it's calling for leadership. So I want you to think about that. So if you take anything away from what I'm sharing with you, it is that if we start with our own institutions, something magical will happen in this nation, and something magical is needing to happen. But we'll talk a little bit more about this at another time. What I want you to take away from being in conversation with us, I've got a couple of questions I want to ask Lapa. is how will you be a founder? What would be your founder persona in this moment? I really want you to sit with that. What would be your founding persona? Are you going to be the founder who watches this nation burn, tear itself from the inside apart? Are you going to be a founder that can show that you can love everyone, that you can work in service of the others thriving, that you can actually get to know folks who don't look like you, have a different political perspective than you? My invitation to you is for us all to continue our journey to be that. And that's why I call this soul work, because I have to figure out how to be the manifestation of love, because if I can't do that, I will be a major contributor to the problem. So I invite you to think about, what does it look like for you to be a manifestation of love in your leadership? So Latha, I want to turn to you. Start there. I want to start there with this, because I've watched your magic in the organization. And so I would just love to hear, how do you build trust? How are you the manifestation of love in your walkabout? Because love is often a word you probably wouldn't be using in Prudential.
It is not. We're trying to change that.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate the question. And look, that is the real work. And we think about trust as a form of long-term capital. It is the currency in which we trade. We need it, right, to operate as an institution, as a financial services firm in this moment, but always. And so, we do it in a few ways. But first and foremost, it's trying to remain proximate, right, actually be in community. And we do that through our place-based work. We've been doing a lot of that work with you. So that's first and foremost, always, right? And then it's about how do we translate the insights, right, bring them forward and make them actionable for our business leaders. The biggest play for us is, right, embedding all of this through our entire business operation, our strategy, our P&Ls. And so it's, right, how do we help our leaders make those connections between real-world household balance sheets and the opportunity set that exists for us to be part of the solution. And then lastly, it's the accountability piece to really, right, make sure that those insights, those actions are then leading to changes in how we allocate capital, how we design product, how we, right, so that when we go to market, people are actually seeing their lived experience reflected in what we do.
Yeah. When there ends up being a misalignment, maybe something was missed, or there was an accountability opportunity to do better, how do you fix those things in an organization like Prudential?
We're really trying to carve out the time to step back and reflect and learn, right? Because we know we can always do better, and we're always striving for that. So it's really about continuous learning and setting up those mechanisms. We're not perfect, but we've had about 10 leaders who've been here with us for the last couple of days who are here to learn with us. And so that's been something we're really trying to do too, is, right, bring more people into the fold so that we have more partners who are as deeply engaged as we are and care as much.
Yeah. Folks often ask me, well, Michael, what do you think we should do for this 250 celebration? Like, if you had your chance to design something new, what would you do? If you had your chance, when you think about the next 250, what would be one or two things you would design into our democracy, our economy, to make it serve all?
Well, if we had the answer for that, I would be sitting on a beach somewhere. I think it's more of what we're talking about. It's really, it is bringing more love into the workplace, right? It's how do we all, every corporation here has a purpose statement, I'm sure of it, right? And we all strive to be purpose-led, make our decisions through that lens of purpose. But really doing that is hard, but it's more critical than ever. And I think it sounds simple and maybe superficial, but if we truly do that, I think we will get to better design all around.
I love that. One of the things about what you said is so important is for us to remember the moments that we are in. This is not a technical moment. Technical moments, you can actually bring solutions that can work quickly and you can plug them in and that's fine. We're in an adaptive moment. And this is why I use the word soul and love, because the problem that we have in this nation is that we actually don't have vessels that can receive the technical interventions that we already know will work. Like the earned income tax credit as an example, because that was done in the Biden administration, we let it expire. It lifted millions of kids out of poverty overnight like that. And And so this is what I mean by that invitation. Like, can we actually see the humanity of folks and work in service of our thriving? Because until this vessel gets right, it can't receive the interventions. And that's why I say the nation is stuck. So I want you all to think about that as well. The words like love and soul, they're not soft words for this moment. It's actually what this moment requires, because if it was about the technical interventions, we wouldn't have a minimum wage that is still at $7.75 or something like that, where there's not a zip code or county in the nation where that's a living wage, as just one example. And we can design an economy that is better than that. So just want you to think about all the rich opportunities they are actually to take this 250 and say, you know what, we can make the next 250 be whatever we want it to be. It is ours for the creating. That's what's so exciting. That's why I say that I'm hopeful in this moment. I'll let you have the last word, Latha. Anything else that makes you hopeful?
Well, I'm going to quote you, actually. You wrote something a few years ago, and I'll paraphrase, but you said, as a nation, we've not yet made good on our foundational commitments to liberty, justice, and equality, or to government of, by, or for the people. But neither have we, the people, failed to achieve them.
Yeah.
I love that. So there is work to be done, but we can do it. And you heard the optimism in Michael's voice. And we're going to end with that. Please join me in thanking Michael McAfee.